Hello and welcome to episode 52 of That's Runnable. You meet me here in the French Pyrenees. I've been spending the last, half an hour trying to get a shot of the mountains that are over to my right, over there. But there's this tree line that I've been running through this beautiful trail, and there's this tree line that is just blocking all of the view. And the only view that I could really get was from private land. I don't really want to be trespassing for the sake of a podcast. So if you're watching this, you should be able to see, I think that's a chateau in the background. It's taken about 10 different shot attempts to get this very shot. And I've only got a little tripod. I've got the bare minimum with me. But I wanted to record this podcast, and I wanted to use it as an opportunity to thank you for 50 episodes. I know this is episode 52, but I wanted to thank you for 50, and we'll get onto that in a second. We have a RunBiz segment for many of you who have been listening from the first few episodes, or at least the first 20 episodes. You'll remember RunBiz, and we'll get into that. I'm interviewing or having a chat with the co-founder of Tailwind. And really, I want to talk today about the topic of sustainability. Not the kind of sustainability that has been taken by the environmentalists, for all good reason, but sustainability in your training, in all your endeavours. And I want to link that in some way to doing 50 episodes of this podcast and planning on doing way more than 50 more. Planning on doing hundreds more episodes. Planning on continuing with everything I'm doing, planning on continuing with my training, continuing running ultras, and all of that is completely dependent on a sustainable practice. So I want to talk about that. And I want to call this episode, it may not be completely sort of SEO friendly and all that captivating as an episode. I do want to call it Play the Long Game. You'll see by now whether I've actually decided to call this episode of the podcast Play the Long Game, but that's what I want to call it, because with everything you do, you have to be thinking long term if you want to be successful. There are very few things that you can be successful at that take only a short amount of intense work. To be really good at something, to make something worthwhile, you have to have a sustainable practice, because everything worth doing takes a long time. So I want to consider this idea of playing the long game. I also want to just take a very quick opportunity to thank the sponsors of this episode. I'm wearing their kit today, as I usually am. I've got their shoes on. I'm currently wearing the Innovate Trail Talon Maxes, and if you have a look at that, can you see that? Amazing lugs. And I want to highlight that these shoes have the best grip I've ever had on any shoes, on any trail shoes. So Innovate have really become so well known for their trail running shoes. I mean, their fell running shoes, their grip technology that they have. They keep advancing it. They keep making the right call on their product development. And I'm not just saying this because I know the guys, I like the guys that are behind all of this. I'm saying that because these are genuinely the best gripping shoes I've ever had. I was doing Endure 24 in Reading not too long ago, and there was one section of that looped course that just got extremely muddy, to the point where they had to have a steward warning everyone that went past to slow down. I ignored that steward every time because I didn't need to, and I just overtook so many people on that quick downhill because they were all cautious with their other trail shoes that are just not very good, and I didn't have to be. So that is my kind of little plug for the sponsor of this episode. This is, of course, not really feasible without a sponsor. Of course, first and foremost, it's not feasible without your listenership and without your support. But secondary to that, to have Innovate sponsor for so long from very early on with this podcast has been a real gift. And it's not just that they sponsor, it's that they make such insanely nice stuff. It's reasonably priced. It's a sensible company for trail running, for gym stuff. So I'm wearing their Polar Tech from the Pro Series top. I've got their shorts on here. I can't remember all the names of all the stuff, but these are my favourite like basic shorts. They just look good and they feel good. That's enough about that, but I wanted to just chime in and thank the sponsor of this episode. You can get 15% off anything on their website with Runnable, RUNNABLE, at checkout. Okay, for a short while, I'm going to talk to you now about playing the long game. And then after I've had a bit of a ramble to you, we'll switch to RunBiz with Jeff from Tailwind, where I have a little chat. If you've ever used Tailwind for your fuel during a race, or if you've ever seen it about and you want to know the origin story, you want to get to know the co-founder a little bit, skip to about 30 minutes in and you can get there. Or you can listen to me talk to you about something that is really quite topical for me right now. I, at the moment, am not very enthused by my running. I'm not very excited about going for runs. Since Devil's Gulch, have become a little bit apathetic about my running. Some of you may relate. I just don't care that much about my training, my running, and all that sort of stuff. I just don't care. And a few years ago, if I had got myself into this sort of state of mind, sorry, I just smacked the mic there, hope that doesn't affect the audio. If I'd got myself into that sort of state of mind a few years ago, I would have probably had a mild crisis in my mind, because I'd start thinking, oh, maybe I don't really love running. Is this really my great interest for life? And maybe I'll just quit and take up mountain biking again instead. Maybe I'll just go to the gym, and then my main hobby can just be listening to vinyl. Or that is such a stupid hobby to replace running. But it's not a stupid hobby, it is one of mine. But it was a bad example to give in that moment. But I'd have a crisis. I would be like, how am I going to fall in love with running again? Why have I fallen out of love of running? Nowadays, though, because it's happened so much, and I see it as a very normal thing to do, I don't really mind all that much. I use it as an opportunity to ease back on my training, to reassess, to make sure I focus on the real reasons why I'm doing this. And I also take the opportunity to recognize that the most important thing overall, if you zoom out, is to maintain a sustainable practice. The most important thing is to maintain a sustainable practice, to play the long game. Now, what I mean by that is not that you are only, if you're training for a marathon, for example, that you're only ever gonna train in a way that you can train forever. You won't get very far in the marathon distance if you're looking for PRs and that sort of thing. If you don't peak in your training, if you don't have 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks of really intense, high volume training. But that, by definition, is not sustainable. To maintain your peak training phase forever is not possible. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for your body. It's not sustainable for your mind. And there are very few people who can train intensely all year round. In fact, I'm being conservative there, that no one can train intensely all year round. So I'm not saying that your training week on week should be the type of training you can do for the rest of your life. What I am saying is, overall, how you approach your running, how you approach your training, the perspective you have on it, the mindsets you maintain, all need to be sustainable. So, in the case of spraining your ankle during an ultramarathon and deciding to DNF instead of continue, you may be faced with a decision to make during a race. You may be faced with a really hard decision to make. I want you to remember these 4 words when you're faced with these tough decisions. I want you to remember to play the long game. Play the long game. If you're faced with apathy, as I am for your running, play the long game. It doesn't matter so much if you miss a week of training, if you just need to ease back. If you're playing the long game, if you're thinking long term about your love for running, about your body and how you're training in a way that's sustainable and good for your physical health, if you're thinking about playing the long game, you're thinking about a sustainable practice, keeping it in your life forever, you will make the right decision. The opposite of that is short-term goals, sacrificing everything for those goals, even possibly sacrificing your love for running just to achieve these short-term goals. That's short-term thinking. That's a short-term game. But if you play the long game, if you think sustainably about things, you will get further. And you will enjoy the process. Now, to bring it back to one of the reasons I wanted to jump on today and do a bit of a solo pod out on the trails, is That's Runnable has reached 50 episodes. Now, that might not seem like very many to you. You know, if you enjoy the podcast, you might just want more, and that's great. I love it when, I sent out a bit of a survey not too long ago and got a bit of feedback that was do more episodes, and that's a great compliment. But to me, 50 episodes is a huge achievement. You may have heard the probably overused fun fact that, I actually don't know the fact, so I started that sentence and then realised I don't know the fact completely, but the vast majority of podcasts that are started don't make it to 20 episodes or something like that. Really butchered that fact, didn't I? But that is apparently true to some degree. Very few podcasts surpass 20 episodes. We surpassed 20 episodes. We then got to 40, doubled it. And now we're at a nice round figure of 50 episodes. 52, in fact. The 50th episode was with my friend Monty. If you haven't listened to that episode, there is good reason that I made it the 50th. I wanted to make it the 50th. It was a special episode about his journey from cocaine addiction, a huge amount of debt, living in lies and secrecy about his dark patterns, if you want to call it that, to redemption, to ultra running, to honesty. Go and listen to that episode. He was brave to share it, and it was actually just such a privilege to house that on this platform. I wanted to make the 50th episode a special episode, just because, and so there's no sponsorship of that episode or anything like that. It's just a plea to go and support his fundraiser for Calm. But 50 episodes to me is a real milestone, and we got there by really working hard. The intention of this podcast was to move from social media content and the stuff I was doing there to longer form audio, because I wanted to have the opportunity to dive deeper on coaching topics, on mindset topics, on things that I think require more language, more description. I wanted to also accompany you on your runs. You may be on a run right now listening to this. Good on you. And, it's been a while since I introduced the podcast by congratulating you for going on your run. And I want to do that now. Congratulations on your run. You're working on yourself. It may be that you're doing the dishes. There's a lot of mozzies around here, so we're doing another outdoor episode with me getting completely molested by mozzies. You may be listening to this during your, Sunday errands. I don't know. But the first sort of few episodes were just sort of solo episodes, and this will always be the format. I want to make sure there are plenty of solo episodes, opportunity to dive deeply into topics that require more language, more description, and more depth. But it's sort of evolved, and I sort of threw out as many episodes as I could in the first few weeks. I was at one point doing sort of 2 or 3 episodes a week, but I knew that at some point I would find a cadence that was sustainable. And that is super important to me. And I believe that I still love doing this. I love doing the podcast. I believe I still love doing it, not just because I love the medium, and I happen to love the medium. I didn't know I did before I started, of course. But I happen to love this format the most. I love the engagement I am able to have with you, with listener questions. I love the sort of creative freedom to make it whatever we want it to be. But I also love the ability to speak in long form, I guess, and be able to not feel so restricted by, a 1-minute reel. But apart from just my pure love for the format, for the medium, I have maintained love for this because I believe I have worked hard to make it a sustainable practice. I've worked hard to ensure I can keep up. And ways in which I've done that, of course, I promise to you a weekly podcast, or at least I loosely do. But I don't get too worked up if I don't manage to get one out. And I also don't seek perfection with these podcasts. You'll notice that the sound quality now, it might be good enough, you may be used to it, is different from when I'm, at home with a bigger mic. It's going to be different when you move on to the RunBiz segment of this episode, not too long from now. Shortly. But I try not to care too much about about keeping it perfect, perfection is the obstacle to progress, and it's not going to be sustainable if I'm sweating the small stuff. And so I want to kind of use that analogy, that celebration of 50 episodes, and my desire to continue doing this and continue doing it for a long period of time, and use it as an example of a practice that I think I have worked really hard to make sure is sustainable in my life. I have done it in a way that I can get away with putting my phone on a tripod out in the trails and recording a podcast with a small mic. I've tried as much as I can to design this podcast so that it is sustainable. And I will continue to work hard at that. So far, I've planned, recorded, edited, produced, and posted all of the podcasts. There's been nothing that hasn't been done by me. So all of the sounds you hear, all of the audio cleanup, all of the interview stuff, everything has been done by myself. And I am not a sound engineer or editor whiz. It's all just me figuring it out. That is arguably not sustainable. As this grows, as I do more outside of the podcast, it may not be sustainable for me to be doing everything behind the scenes. And that's fine. I'm okay to let go of those things and delegate to people who are better at it. And I have that in mind. But for the time being, I have a sustainable practice with this. And that is the same, and here's where it all makes sense. Here, you with me? Here's where it all makes sense. That is the same for your training. You have to make sure with your training that you are maintaining a sustainable practice, that you're playing the long game. And that's not just your training. It's your race schedule. It's your attitude towards it. It's how you train, of course. It's how you race. Everything you're doing, you have to make sure that you're playing the long game and that you have a sustainable practice, something that you can continue doing in the way that you're doing it for a long period of time. I have appreciated this gap, this sort of, I've had a week off. Lou and I have driven down all through the west coast of France to get here into the French Pyrenees to see some friends who live here now. I'm just south of the town Pau, which is where my friend lives. And in that week driving down, I have really lifted the throttle on my training. I've just really eased back, and I've really appreciated that. It's allowed me to see my running with more gratitude, know that I will return eventually, and running will welcome me back with open arms. All of that is required for me personally to maintain a sustainable practice, to play the long game. If I think to myself, play the long game, I don't worry about having a week off. I don't worry about whether I'm not interested in it or whatever. I'm playing the long game. I know it's here for life. I'm going to return when I want to. You are more than you're running. I'm going to say that again, just in case you zoned out for a bit, as we all do. You are more than you're running. You're more than you're running. You're a complete person with pulls and interests and desires and distractions and wants and needs and other hobbies and relationships and work. You are more than you're running. It is okay to sometimes be disinterested. It's okay to sometimes feel apathetic about your running. If you maintain a perspective that is holistic, that considers you as your full self, I promise you that is a more sustainable perspective. To think about yourself as a whole being, to not think of yourself and define yourself just as a trail runner or as an ultra runner or as a marathon runner, whatever. To think of yourself as your complete self, to think of yourself completely, is a more sustainable way to approach these things. Here's a funny thing. I really don't see myself just as a runner. My whole life now is about running, and that to me that can be quite draining. So when I'm out and about, I want to make sure I'm, not just in running kit. And here's a weird thing. Sometimes in London, I will bump into some of you, and I love that. And it's like one of my favorite things. It's the most humbling thing when someone comes up to you in the street and says that they listen to the podcast or that they watch my content or something like that. And I hate it when I'm out for a run and they see me out on a run. No, I don't hate it. But I always find it quite funny, because I think they must think that all I do is run. And because all I do online, my whole sort of online persona, this podcast, it's all about running. But I am so much more than that, and I know that, and the people close to me know that. And I think that it's dangerous to not remember that. You might be listening to this and you might not be obsessed with running, but you might kind of have an interest in it. That, I think, hook on to that. Make sure you stay grounded in the fact that you're not as obsessed with running as everyone else, or you're not as obsessed as this one thing that supposedly defines you. It's far more sustainable to have that perspective. It's far more sustainable to see yourself completely rather than define yourself by this one activity. You will get sick of it. I'll finish with this. And I don't know how long this section has been. I really haven't looked at the time. But I'll finish with this because I may run out of battery. And then I'll let you go and listen to the RunBiz segment with Jeff from Tailwind. That's Runnable as a podcast, as a business, as a coaching entity. Everything that's Runnable looks to do in the future with events, everything that's Runnable is about is because of what I noticed in the running and fitness industry at large. I noticed a spectrum. There are those who are not interested in sport and running and all that stuff. They completely cannot be bothered. And I think that's tragic. I think that there's real opportunity for anyone to just go out and move, to embrace the outdoors. I think that there is, of course, a health crisis in my own country and around a lot of the world. I think a lot of that has to do with a severely low amount of movement. Yes, of course, it is high consumption of calories, but it's, of course, as well, low expenditure of calories. And I think everyone needs to get out and move more. I think people are disconnected from nature. I think they're disconnected from their food. And I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about trying to help encourage those who are not into this stuff, get into this stuff. Because I think that it's improved me as an individual, it's improved my life, and I don't think I'm special. So I think it can do the same for so many. That's one side of the spectrum. And then I see this other extreme side of the spectrum, which is obsession over running, obsession over sport, obsession over fitness and weightlifting, to the extent that it is not sustainable. It is not healthy. It is too much. And I actually see a lot of that online. I see a lot of this sort of over-obsession. And I don't know how else to put it. An over-intensity. And I think a lot of that just does not resonate with people. I think that there is space for a much more reasonable approach. There is space for a less serious approach, for a more playful approach to all this stuff. And that's where I want That's Runnable to come in. I want it to speak to those of you who like this stuff, but don't feel the need to be as obsessed as some in this stuff. I want it to also speak to those who have never tried this stuff and might try this stuff. But I also want it to speak to those who are too obsessed to the extent that it's unhealthy for them, and bring them back to a more playful, a less serious mindset. One that is sustainable, one that you can maintain for a long period of time into your life. One you can do forever. One that actually contributes and gives you more than it takes from you. Because all this stuff, we can talk about marathon times and half marathons and PBs, and we can talk about running as far as you possibly can and, reaching your potential and all that stuff. All of that is irrelevant to me if it's not grounded in an ultimate enjoyment for the outdoors, for movement, for good health, and gratitude for all of the above. Nothing is possible. We can try and achieve all this stuff. We can try and achieve 100 milers and your first 100k, or a PB in the marathon, or your first marathon, whatever you're training for. We can try and do all these things to impress ourselves, to feel self-pride, to feel proud of ourselves. We can try and do all of that, but to me, none of that matters. It all just crumbles away. It's all just nothing to me if it's not grounded in enjoyment for the process. And if it doesn't lift you up, if it doesn't contribute positively to your life, it means nothing. It has to be sustainable. Your training, your racing, your attitude, everything you do, you must play the long game. You must maintain a consistent and sustainable practice if you're to do this for the rest of your life, or as long as you possibly can, if it's to really, truly, positively contribute to your life. I want everyone to be out there moving in the way that works for them. You don't have to be a runner even to listen to this podcast. You can be a cyclist, you can be a swimmer, you can be, to be honest with you, you don't have to do an endurance sport either, I don't know. Whatever gets you out there moving and enjoying the process of doing so, appreciating nature, reconnecting with your environment, reconnecting with yourself, your own body, how that works. I believe we're violently disconnected from the food we eat, from the environments we're in, from our bodies, and from each other. And I know that sounds deeper than it needs to be for a running podcast, but that's just me. Thank you so much for listening to the first 52 episodes. I'm going to pass you on to the RunBiz segment just after this, but I will say just now, if you have listened to this podcast at all, and if you haven't dropped it a rating, I would love you to pick up your phone now and press the buttons necessary, tap the screen in the necessary places just to leave it a rating. You don't need to leave a review per se, but you can leave a rating. That would be amazing. We're going to be doing more of sort of more interesting stuff like RunBiz and listener questions as always, and That's Notable and guest episodes. We've got more to come. I have some seriously exciting guests to come on. We've actually got 2 episodes in a row, this and next episode, where we'll have RunBiz segments. And I guess I will, before I just allow you to carry on and listen to my chat with Jeff from Tailwind, which is a good one, and it's a genuinely interesting founding story. I just want to sort of finish by saying I want to promise you that this podcast will continue. It will continue to get better, and I'm just always doing my best to maintain a sustainable practice, to play the long game. I'm in this for the long term. So with that, I'll hand you over to myself and Jeff as we go on to the first in a while RunBiz segment. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
It's been a while since we had a RunBiz segment. For those of you who have been listening for a while, you'll know what the RunBiz segment is, or you may not remember. So let me remind you. The RunBiz segment is an occasional feature on That's Runnable, where I dive into conversations with people behind the businesses shaping the running world. It's not about polished pitches or buzzwords and business chat. It's about real stories, values, and the gear or ideas that genuinely support the running community. Whether it's an emerging startup or a well-loved brand with years of experience, RunBiz is here to spotlight the interesting, the thoughtful, and the impactful. These are the brands you might already love, or the ones you're about to discover. This week I'm joined by Jeff Vierling, co-founder of Tailwind Nutrition, a name many of you will already know. Based out in the US, Tailwind has been fueling endurance athletes for many years and continues to grow as they expand globally and roll out new products that speak directly to the needs of long-distance runners and whatever your endurance pursuits. I've been using Tailwind for a long time now, and for me it's always been a reliable go-to, a safe bet for long endurance efforts. What stands out about Tailwind is how much they genuinely care, not just about performance, but about their customers and the community they serve. This is a founder-led business with heart, and I loved getting into the story behind it with Jeff. I'll let the conversation do the talking. Here's my RunBiz chat with Jeff Vierling of Tailwind Nutrition. just calling in from Colorado. You've lived there since you founded the business, right?
Yeah, actually, back to 1998. And
Wow.
we moved to Durango, Colorado from Seattle, Washington.
Nice. Amazing. I was just up in Seattle.
Yeah,
It is
Seattle's
beautiful up
a
there.
beautiful place, and we loved living there. But having grown up mostly in Colorado and my wife in the West as well, the mountains were calling, and so was the sunshine.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, we're always trying to chase the sun. My girlfriend Lou, she'll come back after a walk and she'll be like, I'm just feeling so grateful today. And then I'll be like, yeah, is the sun out?
Sun's out.
Yeah.
Definitely in England.
Yeah, for sure. Nice. And you're a bit of a mountain biker, or is that how it sort of all started, with a bit of endurance mountain biking?
It is, and I had always really enjoyed mountain biking. Got into it actually kind of starting out in college when I decided to forego a meal plan and buy a bike instead, and then I was kind of bumming off all my friends for lunches and dinner.
Yeah,
Yep.
Expensive, isn't it? That is certainly an expensive hobby. They say running's not as expensive, but we get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I try to keep my bike quiver to a minimum, but it does have its own way of proliferating.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me then about the kind of starting story. Like, how did the product itself from Tailwind Nutrition come about? What was that sort of first initial experience?
Yeah. Well, really, a friend of mine kind of convinced me that I needed to sign up for something and train for it, which is something I'd never really done before. And I was definitely, like we said, an avid mountain biker already and just doing it for fun. But I signed up for the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, which is a 100-miler in Colorado. And Leadville is very high, about 10,400 feet.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go down much from there. So you spend the whole day kind of at very high altitude. And I trained very hard for that. I think my training was actually pretty decent for a first timer, but nutrition was just still a mystery to me. I definitely paid for it on race day. My stomach was just awful. And I did finish. I kind of gutted it out and crossed the finish line. And my wife, Jenny, was there conveniently with a video camera. She was filming it and just, telling me congratulations, coming in for a hug. And I'm like, going straight over to the trash can. And I'm puking. Yeah, I am puking up the muesli that was pretty readily identifiable that I'd had 13 hours earlier in the day.
Oh,
yeah. So that was my kind of first experience with sports nutrition and the pitfalls thereof. So that was sort of my inspiration, if you will, is having my head in the trash can. And I just felt like, wow, I trained really hard. I wanted to enjoy this day, but I really didn't enjoy it because it was really torturous, and wanted to fix that. Kind of was taking a shotgun approach, trying all sorts of different products and not really finding something that was working well for me. And that got frustrating. So I wanted to just understand a little more about how our bodies fuel. And I figured if I could do that, then maybe I could choose a better nutrition plan. And so I started diving into the medical literature around what's necessary for fueling and how our bodies absorb energy and all those things. And at the time, and this is kind of in the 2000s time frame.
Yeah, right. I was going to ask actually, when exactly is this?
Yeah. At the time, I kind of started to understand why some of the products I was trying weren't working well for me. Maybe they included ingredients that were hard to digest or unnecessary ingredients, and or they kind of had tastes and textures that just weren't sustainable, something that you could use for a really long day. And as I started understanding that, I was like, I don't really think anybody's doing this really well right now. And that led me to start to make my own powder and experiment with that. And that's ultimately what became the Tailwind Endurance Fuel, which was our first product. Definitely wasn't at that time. It's just for me, trying to solve my own problems. But after a bunch of tinkering, I found kind of some stuff that worked pretty well. And I started to share it with people around Durango, friends.
Yeah.
And this is a very athletic town. So it was a great testing ground.
Yeah.
There's a group that I'd ride with on Thursday nights, a bike and beer group, and we go to the pub afterwards, and I'd hand out dime bags of white powder and
Right.
ask people to try it out. They kind of kept coming back and saying, hey, this is the best stuff I've ever used. And, can I get some more? And making it in the kitchen. And so those little baggies became, gallon size bags. And I found myself meeting people in parking lots and handing off gallon size bags of white powder.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and what was I wanted to know for you specifically when you're creating this product, what were the problems you were facing? And, obviously these problems, it turns out they were pretty common problems. It sounds like other people were having sort of similar experiences, but what specifically were you trying to solve with this product? What problems were you having?
Yeah, there were
definitely, it's an individual thing.
It is an individual thing, and I think as I've learned later, there are some things that were really common with endurance athletes. Obviously, one of them was, the biggest one was really just keeping my gut happy, being able to intake enough calories, and not just that, but to keep my hydration and my electrolytes in balance so that, my body could just be able to do what it's supposed to do and to be able to sustain that over a whole day. So really keeping the gut happy was primary number one, but there were some other ones as well. For me, I found that trying to juggle multiple products through a day and keep track of timings was pretty stressful, and it really wasn't fun. You get like 6 hours in and your brain starts to go south and you're like, oh, did I have that gel like 10 minutes ago or was that 45 minutes ago? I can't really remember. And
yeah, totally.
So I really felt like, hey, this is too complicated. And again, back in that time, what a lot of brands were doing was trying to divide out, say like, maybe you're going to get your calories from two different sources and you're going to get your electrolytes from a pill and then you're going to get your hydration from another source. And trying to juggle all that was just too much. And so I was trying to really simplify. Nice. And to simplify, I wanted to achieve a couple things. One was just to remove that stress, and two, make it much more consistent and repeatable. Because if you're kind of like juggling a bunch of different pieces of nutrition and you're using them at different times, it's very difficult to be very consistent with that. And then that means you're presenting your gut with like a really inconsistent set of challenges. And so I wanted to make it very simple, very consistent, and very repeatable and dependable. And then the third piece was, hey, this has to be something that I can stand drinking all day. And it has to work when it's hot, right? You're out there, you're supporting yourself, and everything gets warm. And the more sweet and the more sugary and the worse that becomes, and the more intolerable it becomes. And then I wanted it to be something that I could carry really easily. So be able to put it into a pack. Like people obviously cycle with bottles, but I liked using a pack so that I could go for a period of a couple hours and then just switch out the pack or refill the bladder. And so it had to be really easy to clean out. So it's not like creating some sort of science experiment in your stuff. Just keep it dead simple, repeatable, easy to use, and work.
Man,
so I can forget about it.
Language. You're speaking my language. The first thing you're saying is really resonating because you want to be in like autopilot. You want to be automatic and easy and quick with the nutrition plan that you have. Because like you say, when your brain gets fatigued, you don't know if you've done the right thing. When did you last eat? Simplicity is such an important part of it. And secondly, flavor fatigue. And was your initial product unflavored completely? Was that intentional?
Actually, the first flavor that I did was a mandarin orange.
That was the original.
That was the original. Yes,
I love that flavor.
And we do have a what we call a naked, unflavored version as well, and that kind of followed pretty quickly. But actually, it's really true of all the flavors and across all of our product lines is that we really try and be very, very, very light-handed with the flavors because of that flavor fatigue. And something that tastes good, like, if you're kind of sitting on the couch, is not really what we're aiming for. We're aiming for what tastes good like 6 hours in and something that you can tolerate and be able to stomach all day.
And for you personally, you want to make a good product, but the reason you want to make a good product is because you want it to work on races and everything. But of course, I can imagine, and I get this sort of impression from Tailwind, you just love the mountains, right? You just sort of love the outdoors, and you've got this pure love for trying to enjoy it more. And the last thing you want, right, is for your nutrition to go south.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if the nutrition works, you kind of forget about it, and that's what that means it's actually working for you. We'd rather not have the nutrition be the thing that you're focused on. You just get out there and enjoy being outdoors, enjoy the mountains, enjoy everything you love about the sport, and that kind of that. I think where we kind of left the story, it was getting a bunch of positive feedback on this, but I wasn't thinking about it as a business. And really what changed that was a woman that I had met through Leadville, and she had dropped out of 7 races. So 700 milers, like could not. And it was all because her stomach would just shut down, and she had to DNF, and she could not get over the nutrition hump. It was really killing her. And so I sent her some of this. It didn't even have a name, right? But I'm like, hey, this is what I'm working on. It's been working well for me. You want to give it a try? And she emailed a couple months later. She had finished the Shenandoah 100. And that was the first finish of 100. And her stomach felt great the whole day. And she was in tears as she crossed the finish line.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And it just made me
awesome.
think, like, yeah, just that, oh, wow. I mean, it made me feel really good that something I was working on could help somebody kind of achieve a life goal. And that's where it became really meaningful, because like, we all get out there for our own reasons. And if we could help you, achieve something that's meaningful for you, then that's something that I could build a business around.
You seem to have as well like a really amazing reputation for like caring about your customers, actually. And there's a bit of a reputation, I think, in the early days, and maybe still now, you still write notes to people as you deliver the product. There's this real sense that you care. Has that really just been something because you've interacted with the customers and seen great feedback and great stories? Is that something that drives you?
It's 100% of what drives us. That is still our mission, is to help athletes achieve their goals. And we do still write those handwritten notes. That's something that's, from a business standpoint, it's tough to scale. And we put, if you buy a bag of Tailwind, we put your name on the bag and write your name on the bag. And I think it's because a lot of us are athletes ourselves. We get it, like how personal and meaningful this is as an athlete. Yeah. So we're trying to communicate, hey, we're with you. We're in your corner and we're supporting you. And that is the basis of our business.
Yeah. And you're obviously US based, but you've expanded out now. I want to sort of give you the floor, because I think I know the story, or at least, you can go on the website and you are telling the story of how, you expanded into the UK, but you have sort of distributors. But how did that start, that kind of initial expansion outside of the US? Because I think for a lot of US businesses, at least my experience of US businesses has been that you can do pretty damn well in the States alone. And there's not necessarily a need all that early on to go global, right? But did it come from desire from the UK market?
Actually, that is exactly what happened. And our UK partner has been with us for a very long time. Really, I think 2015 was when we first started to ship, but there was also like groundwork before that. And it came from our UK partner's passion, really, as a runner himself. Mike had used our products and had kind of, I think, had an experience that was very resonant with our values, in terms of that being sort of something that was very important for him in his life and in that stage of his life. He really got the brand and the value that we're trying to deliver in this. So he approached us and said, "Hey, I've got experience here in import and export, and I think I could introduce this into the UK and that it would be well received." We decided kind of that would be interesting to see what could happen there, and it was very small scale. It was like just kind of toe in the water, but I think we shipped over our one pallet, and then he's grown that business and grown the family, the Tailwind family there, and that's it's been pretty cool to see because the Tailwind UK team has carried over, like, writing the notes and the very personal approach to the business, and being a part of the community, supporting the community. And that's exactly what we want to see. And that model has actually been replicated kind of all over the globe, which is also really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it was a little bit opportunistic, but we just saw the alignment and values and said, hey, this is somebody who we can work with and maybe grow the brand and find out if there is kind of global need, which we felt like there was, because we all share similar reasons and for getting outside and for running or exercise, and we felt like we could support that. So that was pretty cool. And I have to say, I'll tell you a little story that our daughter now lives in Bristol in the UK, and she joined the Bristol Run Club and showed up from the first one, and the run leader and two other people that were there were wearing Tailwind UK shirts.
Look at that.
Which is super cool, right?
Amazing.
And we were just visiting her back in June, and Jenny and I joined in with our daughter and went for a run with the Run Club. So
that's
so
great. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like, for me, a good product deserves to just be in the hands of people that need it. And I've been using Tailwind because I heard of Tailwind on, I guess, like American podcast maybe I was listening to. It was very much like a US based business, but I was really chuffed to get my own hands on, especially the Mandarin. I was milling that for sure. And I think the one thing for me is, like, it just is very clear from Tailwind, whether you go on the website or you just are involved in an event where Tailwind's present, it's just clear that you care about the community and you care about the athletes. And that is for me a really important differentiator. And it's a pretty saturated market now, becoming more and more saturated as we have sort of seen the running boom, as it were. Have you felt that running boom in a positive way for the business, or how has it kind of affected distribution choices and strategy and the competitive landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the running boom has, I think, been really cool to see and also to be part of. And it's I think that's helped us to grow as a brand, but it's also helped us to support more people. And that's really our mission, right? And one thing that I think is a little bit different about us as a brand is that we're not just focused on the elite athletes and, the top of the podium. And maybe this comes from my own experience as an athlete, and like not a great one. I mean, I've got persistence, but I'm not the fastest guy out there by any means. And so I know, like, the longer you're out there is the longer you're out there, and the more support you need. So we definitely understand that, like, hey, that everybody whether you're kind of trying to finish your first event, or you have just some other goals, like you're trying to get yourself in better shape or lose some weight or something like that, that nutrition can play a really key role in that. And so we're not necessarily just focused on the elite finishers or the elite athletes. Some of those folks have come to our brand, but that's because they found that the products work really well for them, and then we've been happy to support them as well. Yeah, the running boom has definitely been a boon for us in terms of growing as a company, and I feel like we've kind of grown up alongside it.
Amazing. Okay, then final question, because I know I've got to let you go, but what is the sort of direction of travel for Tailwind over the next sort of few years as you come off this boom in the running industry?
Well, I think what we're doing is really trying to find ways to continue to support people in even better ways. So there are a couple thrusts with that. We launched our high carb fuel line earlier this year, and that's been a product of a lot of work with a lot of testing and a lot of athletes to try and really maintain those key things, that like the simplicity of it, the very easy on your gut, and try and nail flavors, which is super challenging with that kind of a product because you're talking about so much more carbohydrate. It's very difficult to keep it from getting too sweet and overly powerful. But that's been very well received so far. And so we're going to kind of continue to lean into that, which is a direction that a lot of runners are going in the sport, is to try and build up their carbohydrate intake. And so we're going to keep supporting that, but we're also working on other things that make the experience simpler, simpler ways to carry,
Amazing.
Simpler ways to dose without creating more trash.
Nice.
say too much on that yet, but trying to see like, hey, how can we keep supporting people and support the sports and support the places that we like to recreate in as well.
Amazing. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time. It's clear to me that yourself and Jenny are very passionate about the sort of founding ethos of the business, and it really sort of rings true. As soon as you do any research about Tailwind Nutrition, you really get a vibe that especially speaks to me, and I think it's the reason I want to engage with you. It's a great product, but it's also a company that really cares, and we appreciate that here at That's Runnable. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much, Tommy. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and maybe next time out we're out in England, let's go for a run.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Jeff. I hope you enjoyed it. There are some businesses that really do care, and there is a clear difference between those that do and those that don't. And for me, Tailwind, as a founder-led, family-run business, scaling out, trying to solve the problems that they solved for themselves as founders, but also solve the problems that they know so many endurance athletes are trying to solve with one of the most complicated issues and one of the most difficult issues to solve, and that is nutrition. They care about their customers, they care about the community, and that shows in how they operate, and it shows in the products they produce. I've been using Tailwind for many years, and after having this conversation, Tailwind were nice enough to offer a little 10% discount. So if you go to their website, information in the show notes, you can use the code RUNNABLE for a little 10% discount there. I hope you do go and check them out, go and try the products for yourself. Thanks again for listening. Thanks, Jeff, for coming on. It was a real pleasure to chat to you and hear the founding story. Little reminder as well of my coaching hub. That's Runnable's coaching hub is designed for those of you who want to feel confident in the gym, who want to build a more durable body so you can train sustainably long into your life and enjoy the mountains in the right way. If you're interested in the coaching hub, go to the show notes. There's a new intake on the first Monday of every month. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining. If you have come this far, if you've enjoyed it and you haven't rated the podcast, please do drop us a little rating. That really does wonders for the podcast itself. And if you haven't shared it with a mate and you think that they would like it, feel free to share it as well. Any sort of online engagement, commenting, following, subscribing, whatever platform you're using, do whatever you want to try and support. I really appreciate you listening. Until next time, run the runnable, keep showing up for yourself, and I will see you next time.